Randy Orton slithering.
Watch out, watch out, watch out! Oh my God!
Oh, welcome back to some more quarantine content. As much as I would love to be flying around outside in the sky right now, the weather sucks today, and I figured I'd film a video that I've been wanting to do for a while. Fits the quarantine content vibe perfectly, and that is my top 10 most extreme launches. And a warning, there's not just 10, but I threw in an extra bonus. We're gonna go for 11. Even though the title says 10, I couldn't pick one of these 11 to get rid of to make it an even number, so bonus round. Some of them are based around the most skill or the sketchiest launch. Others are just really cool locations. All of the links for each of these videos will be in the description, so if you want to go back, reminisce, watch the full episode, you're more than welcome to do that. And if you want to support this channel, if you like what we're doing here, check the first link in the description for our Risky Biscuits Co. merch. We've got hats, we've got shirts just like this one, we've got the blueprint design, we've got the limited Do Not Report Tucker Got to the FAA design. So let's start out with technically number 11, and I kind of sorted these from the most mild going up to the most extreme, so stick around to the end for the most extreme. In this video, technically paravlog number 11. My car was in the shop for some reason, I don't know why, but it was a beautiful afternoon and I wanted to go flying. But without a car, I couldn't transport my motor to the park or the airport or anything. So I got all my gear and I walked down the street and found an area that looked suitable to take off from. This was a pipeline, like where they run underground gas lines. But there was a nice mode section, and it wasn't the tightest area, but at the time, about 4 years ago, I definitely didn't have as much skill, so it was quite a bit more of a challenge to me. So I gave it a good full power run up, I hit it hard, got the wing up, and just barely got off the ground before I biffed it into the weeds.
That was a little wonky.
Now, I don't know why, but somewhere in this video I had cut out, there's actually power lines that go across this narrow channel of trees. So right after launch, I had to get myself up over the power lines and then drop back down, and I can nicely fly in this little narrow canyon of trees out into the valley below. Let's go to number 10. This was back when I had the Blackhawk 125 before I really started getting into making YouTube videos. And it was just a beautiful morning in the valley. I had gone out, explored. It was one of those mornings where the air was perfectly calm. But about halfway through my flight, I started to realize that there was something wrong with my engine. I could get just about cruise power out of it, but nothing more. So I could maintain level flight, but I couldn't climb. And I was far enough away from the area I took off from that I didn't think it was safe to milk it all the way back home. So I found a nice street and I put it down right in the middle of the street. I checked traffic, there were no power lines, and I landed here. I took all my gear off, and at the time, and still to this day, I carry a little tool pouch. And in that tool pouch, I had a screwdriver and an Allen wrench, which is pretty much all I needed to take my carburetor off. I checked the carburetor, diagnosed that there was a whole bunch of lint in a little screen in my carburetor. So I blew that out, nobody really stopped, a bunch of cars went by, put everything back together, and got ready to take off again. As I'm setting up to take off, of course, my wing's laid out in the middle of the street, and I had to pick it up, move it for a car. That guy goes by, and then I'm about ready to go, and I had to stop traffic. And I have no idea what was going through these people's minds. Some random guy with a fan on his back in the middle of the street starts running towards them. So let's go down to number 9. And now this was from one of our van life adventures, and when we're going around the country, scoping out cool places to fly, finding a suitable launch site is always a challenge. Some spots are a lot better than others, some are a bit sketchy. And this one, in order to fly the Superstition Mountains, I had found this almost cul-de-sac thing on a dirt road. and it had a really girthy fence around the whole area. So I'll show you guys the Google Maps view. So here's the Superstition mountain range, beautiful mountain range, and this is where I decided to launch from. Now, the wind was kind of coming from this direction, so I set up over here in this corner. I ended up taking off in this direction, but somewhere along the line turned about 90 degrees and I went down the road, almost hit the guardrail. And some of this was just poor wing control on my part. I was kind of all over the place. I was stumbling, I was letting the wing surge too much, and I pulled it off, but I was on and off power. I almost tripped, I almost hit the fence.
That's a little bit better. I'm gonna go for it. That was one of the hardest launches I've had to do in a while.
All right, let's go down to number 8. And this was from the Icarus race. If you haven't caught this series, it's one of my favorite series. The Icarus race was a 1,200 mile unsupported paramotor race that I participated in and actually won in the end. Unsupported means I had to carry all the gear to support myself, which I put in a big Carhartt duffel bag. It probably weighed 30 to 40 pounds. I had sleeping bag, water, some food, a whole bunch of survival stuff, as well as I had about a 2-gallon bladder of gasoline on my chest. So in addition to the weight of the paramotor on my back, I had a whole bunch of weight on the front, and my whole set of gear was really, really heavy. Add on to that, I was wearing about 2 different jackets because it was cold, really thick gloves, which makes it harder to launch. I had boots, multiple layers of pants. I was just bundled up. Add on to that, I was at a high altitude, and in this particular launch, I had 0 wind, and I was very unfamiliar with this whole setup, launching with a ton of gear. I was lucky enough that my very first launch of the Icarus race, I had a decent bit of wind, so it wasn't that bad. But fast forward to my first stop. I needed to get gas. I come in for a landing, like an idiot, I freaking clip a tree and I fall down.
Oh yeah, we're down.
Turns out I broke like 3 spars on my paramotor. I had to hike to a gas station with all my gear, tons of weight. I go inside, buy some super glue, buy some duct tape, and I kind of get my gear back in one piece again. Luckily, a nice guy in a truck offered me a ride to his farm field that was just down the street. This is the gas station where I filled up, and for some reason I thought it would be a good idea to land right here. And it would have been a good idea had I not cut it too close to this pine tree, caught my wingtip, and kind of crashed right here. The guy in the truck gave me a ride from the gas station down to this farm field here. After I got everything all suited up again, all my gear back on, which takes a long time to prepare, it's a process, I was ready to go. And these poor fellas that had loaned me a ride were watching me try to take off in their farm field. I get everything hooked up, my fuel bladder, my gloves, my bag, everything. There's 0 wind. I was kicking the grass, trying to stir up a little bit of dust to see if I had anything to help me, and I didn't. I go for the launch, and I remember just feeling the lift of the wing disappear on my run. My legs just couldn't handle it. I knew I was gonna fall. And it was just the slow motion trying to keep up on my feet, but I knew I couldn't as I'm aborting, and I ended up having to just face plant, fall on my face, and slide out.
Oh, good.
I act like that's just supposed to happen every time, and fortunately, the second run I took off my gloves to try to get a little bit more feeling in my fingers. I waited for the slightest bit of wind. I was like meditating on this launch, so I stood there for a long time waiting till I found like a hint of wind, and I went for it. And that launch went so much better. I was thrilled to be in the air again.
Woo! Yeah! Oh God. I am so relieved to get in the air. You don't even know.
All right, let's go on to our next clip. So this one was semi-recently, May 21st, 2019. And this is when we were down in the Bahamas with the guys from Team Fly Halo, doing all kinds of crazy Bahamas shenanigans with boats and mid-air refueling. This particular case was when we were trying to do the mid-air refuel boat to paramotor bladder pickup mission. And on Google Maps, I took off somewhere over here on Elbow Key. I took off from there and flew all the way across this huge stretch of water. I had the boat within gliding distance the whole time as my safety net. And the idea was that I was gonna land somewhere on the opposite shore as the boat got in position to take off again and then fly over and pick up my bladder of fuel that I would need to make it back home. So I had picked this random spot on Google Maps, and as you can see, the resolution is pretty garbage. So I didn't really know what I was working with until I got there. And I scoped it out, I looked at the site a bit, and decided I could probably pull it off. There was a bit of wind that is always a huge help, but the problem was this launch site was kind of in a little bowl. There was a lot of obstruction, trees, little sand dunes that made the wind really variable. The landing was not that big of a deal. I put it down nice and easy, but then I go to launch after investigating this area, and that rotor just whipping around from everywhere made it pretty difficult.
Come on, baby. Stay up there. Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo! Freaking risky biscuits.
All right, so this next clip was actually from the summer of 2016. I had posted the actual video the summer after in 2017. This was when we flew in the world's largest air show, EAA AirVenture Oshkosh, with the Paradigm team for the Paradigm team's very first show. But the thing with this launch was the setup was not difficult. We were in the middle of an open field. We had a little bit of wind. There was nothing challenging about the launch itself, aside from the fact that probably a couple 100,000 people were watching us. And the pressure was just enormous. Like, all of us, that was the vibe. We were all like, this is scary. We don't want to mess this up. And if we did mess it up, we would look like the biggest idiots as we're trying to lay out our wing again and get someone to pull start us and take off again as we're on this professional air show stage. Luckily, the anticipation, like a lot of things, was much worse than the actual nervousness in the moment. As soon as things started to roll, I felt a lot better. The nerves kind of went away to a degree, but there was still a lot of pressure. All right, so the next clip is from January 24th, 2017, and this was the first time I decided to try to launch on skis. Now, ski launching is pretty sketchy. I feel like it's not even something that people do often. It's just like one of those cool tricks that you can pull off every so often. Part of my problem here was that like the grass was literally poking through the snow here in New Jersey, so I didn't have like even thick enough snow to get a turn going on. It felt quite a bit janky. The inflation itself felt good, like the wing just came up and I started to move forward and taxi. But as I got some more speed, there comes a time where like you're getting enough speed that you're getting lift, which is good because it's taking the pressure off of the skis. But at that higher speed on the skis, it feels really unstable and sketchy. Like if you catch an edge, you're just gonna hit the ground and explode your propeller. But luckily I pulled it off the first time with zero issues, and I was freaking stoked.
Oh, yeah! 'Cause I got a 100 RPM. 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 100 RP
Next clip is another one with the Paradigm team, and this was in Evansville, Indiana. This was a kind of urban air show that we did. While all the other performers in airplanes took off from a nearby airport, flew over the Ohio River on kind of the show line set up there, we took off at Show Center, which turned out to be this tiny little sidewalk looking thing right next to the water. Now, once again, like the actual launch itself wasn't that challenging. The wind was coming from the right direction. We had enough room for the launch, and there was actually a little bit of a downhill boat ramp going on. But this one was just super cool because it was like an urban launch. It was one of those situations where like in a normal situation, it would be completely illegal. The police would be called if you just took off from there. But this was an air show. It was all certified and TFR'd and all those things, that legal stuff in the FAA, so we were good. But looking back after taking off, and we're just over the Ohio River with this tiny little strip on the side, about as wide as a 2-lane street for us to land in, it was an incredible experience. So after having launched on skis a few times, I wanted to kind of one-up that, and I thought I would launch on ice skates. And in this particular situation, I was not expecting it to even work. I kind of figured that this was gonna be a fail video. I was gonna run up my motor. I was gonna, fall off my ice skates, hopefully not damage any equipment, but at least it would be a good entertaining video of me falling on the ice. I am not an ice skater. Like, I've maybe ice skated 5 times in my whole life. So first I had to practice ice skating without a paramotor to try to figure out how to do it again. And the ice we were on was like a frozen pond. It wasn't even flat. To my surprise, it actually worked perfectly. Just like the ski launch, as I got speed, things started to get a little wobbly, but luckily I had just enough speed that I kind of picked up my feet and then I just flew away. So nearing the end here, this one was September 27th, 2018, and this was flying tandem with my mom. And now there's a couple things that made this particular launch extra challenging. At the time, I had gotten my tandem rating, so I went through the course, and I had flown my dad and Jacqueline a few times tandem, but I was still a relatively new tandem pilot. I knew what I was doing, but I wasn't seasoned. I didn't have a ton of experience doing this sort of thing. Add in that we were launching in 0 wind, which with any tandem passenger, a 0 wind launch, foot launch tandem, is incredibly difficult. Add on to that, my mother, who's a trooper, has 2 bad knees. She's had surgery on both of her knees, which means she can't really run that well, and she's precious cargo to me, and I really didn't want to hurt her. So this was a level of pressure and required a whole lot of skill to be able to pull it off. If you watch this launch back, we are running so hard, trying our best. I got the brakes down to my ass, trying to get enough lift to take off. And if we had to run like another 10 feet, I don't know if we would have made it.
Keep it going, keep it going, keep it going.
All right, final video, and this is my all-time favorite launch. And this was part of the Icarus race, day 3. I had diverted off course all the way over to Jackpot, Nevada. There's this big old airport here, and the night prior to when this video starts, I had landed at this airport. Turns out the airport shut down. Everything was locked up. There were no people around, and I had to get my gear through a gate. I called a local hotel and I asked them for a strange favor. If they had anyone with a pickup truck that could come pick up a guy at the airport, and luckily they did. I was extremely thankful, and they showed up in this pickup truck. I loaded all my gear in the back, and I actually rode in the back of this guy's truck over to the hotel. That night I was up super late, walking down to the gas station, fueled up the paramotor in my hotel room, and then I went to some casino for dinner. I remember going all out. I ordered chicken wings and a hamburger and some like waffle fries or something. I ended up going to bed really late in this little hotel here. Now, the next morning, I didn't want to ask these guys for another favor to transport me back to the airport. So I decided that I was just gonna try to take off from the hotel somehow. Initially, I wanted to take off on this driveway, and it had a nice wide open amount of room, and it was downhill, which would have really helped. But there was the most faint, tiny bit of wind, and unfortunately, it was coming from the south, which meant that I would have had a crosswind on this launch, and I decided between those two different options, going into the wind was better in this case. So I scoped it out. There were a lot of hazards. There were light poles, cars, trucks, and then at the end of the parking lot, which wasn't that long, was a huge drop off, maybe a 50-foot cliff. And then below that, there was a building and there were power lines, a lot of different hazards, and so many different ways that this could go wrong. And on top of that, just like my other Icarus launch, I had all my gear, tons of heavy weight. And once again, I just sat here with everything clipped in, taking deep breaths, thinking about how this could go right. I went for it, no vehicles pulled out in front of me. I got lift, and I flew off the edge of the cliff for like an insane visual.
Yeah, dude! That's how you do a launch. Holy shit. Woo!
To this day, I think that's the most insane, most fun launch I've ever done, and the most challenging. So that's my top 10 plus one bonus favorite takeoffs. If you guys enjoyed this video, drop a like and let me know if you want to see top 10 landings. I know this is a long one, but I hope you enjoyed it for some good quarantine content. And like I said, if you want to go back and watch any of these videos, they're all linked down below. I appreciate all your guys' support on all these recent quarantine videos, just sitting here chilling, reliving old memories. Hopefully very, very soon things will start to change. The weather's gonna be getting better and we'll be back out to flying like the good old days. Until then, I will see you guys. Peace.